I'm Andreas Hamberger, and this is the Hamberger Report, where I cover AI governance, enterprise architecture, and the technology decisions that actually matter to the people who have to make them. If you find this useful, subscribe and hit the like button. It helps more professionals find the channel. Now let's get into it. As many as 60% of New Zealand's aged care facilities found out last month that their medication management platform had been hacked. Patients were marked as deceased, while sitting in their chairs waiting for morning tea. Names were changed, allergy records were altered, prescribers were reassigned. I'm Andreas Hamberger. This is the Hamberger Report, where I cover cybersecurity explained for the people who sit around the board table. MediMap went offline on the 22nd of February and remained offline for days. Registered nurses doubled per shift to manage paper-based medication rounds. The designated backup system was also compromised. Nothing was stolen in the traditional sense. No data was exfiltrated the way that the ManageMyHealth breach extracted over 400,000 clinical documents just 8 weeks earlier. This was different. The attacker changed what the system believed to be true about the people it served. In security terms, the ManageMyHealth breach was a confidentiality failure. MediMap was an integrity failure. Two different attack types, the same stolen credential vector, the same governance gap. Technical controls did not catch either one. Both platforms could verify who was accessing the system. Neither could verify whether what they were doing made any clinical sense. There is a governance framework that would have helped. It is not in your firewall configuration. It is not in your authentication policy, and most boards have never heard of it. The MediMap attacker used a single session to modify demographic records across multiple aged care facilities. No technical alert fired, no anomaly detection flagged the pattern. A registered nurse in Christchurch caught it because she had just spoken with her patient. The system said the patient was deceased. She knew that was false, not because she ran a query or checked an audit log, because she had a relationship with the person the data was supposed to represent. That is relationship verification. It is the first of three mechanisms that make up the cultural security envelope. The second mechanism is protocol adherence. Marking a patient as deceased in a clinical system should trigger specific processes, 1-hour notification, 2 Papaku protocols, cultural obligations that extend across communities. If no corresponding clinical event accompanies a status change, the modification is anomalous. An attacker using stolen credentials cannot replicate the procedural context that surrounds a legitimate change. The third mechanism is cultural fluency assessment. The attacker renamed patients after a recently deceased American political figure and New Zealand politicians' names. In a New Zealand aged care context, those names are immediately incoherent. Anyone with a genuine connection to those communities would recognize it instantly. Signal flares of compromise, but only if someone is positioned to read them. Traditional security architecture stacks technical layers, firewalls, intrusion detection, endpoint protection. Each layer verifies legitimacy on technical grounds. The cultural security envelope adds a fundamentally different dimension. It assesses actions against relationship norms and cultural protocols. Adversaries optimizing to defeat technical defenses do not simultaneously optimize for cultural authenticity. That heterogeneity is the strategic value. For both of these breaches, the governance failure is the same. Platforms holding critical health data with no cultural governance layer. The Kaitiakitanga Checklist translates Maori data sovereignty principles into 9 specific questions across 3 pillars. Directors do not need to become cultural experts. They need to verify that management has implemented the right oversight mechanisms. Pillar 1 covers data sovereignty and provenance. Does your organization maintain a register of Maori data classified by sensitivity as Taonga? Can you confirm that sensitive Maori data is stored in New Zealand's sovereign cloud infrastructure? Does your audit of intent include provenance chains for Maori data elements? Pillar 2 covers algorithmic integrity. Has training data for autonomous agents been reviewed for historical biases that profile IWI or HAPU? Does your authentication system monitor for cultural mismatches in communications? Have you simulated failure modes to assess how a breach would disproportionately affect Maori communities? Pillar 3 covers partnership and accountability. Are you partnering with the Data Iwi Leaders Group for high-stakes data decisions? Have you quantified the reputational cost of a breach involving Maori Taonga? Do affected Maori citizens have a clear pathway to contest and correct inaccurate records? 2 Maori governance principles underpin this architecture. Rangatiratanga, decision authority creates clear escalation pathways. When Maori partners hold actual authority over Taonga data, frontline staff can escalate confidently. Social engineering attacks that rely on urgency and implicit pressure to approve suspicious changes lose their leverage. Kaitiakitanga, the data is not yours to risk. It belongs to the people it describes. Guardianship obligations counteract institutional pressures that treat security investment as optional. When MediMap's attacker modified records belonging to aged care residents, no Kaitiakitanga framework existed to treat those records as requiring protective oversight beyond standard database permissions. The temptation is to frame Maori data sovereignty as a compliance obligation. One more checklist on the way to operational approval. That framing misses the strategic reality entirely. Organizations implementing genuine cultural security envelopes gain detection capabilities their competitors lack. They detect anomalies that purely technical architectures miss. They build community trust that translates to social license. They reduce their tech surface available to adversaries who must now defeat both technical and cultural defenses simultaneously. Those 2 breaches represent the difference between what I call the heaven vector and the Skynet vector of data governance. The heaven vector, transparency, accountability, genuine partnership, systems that are inherently more resilient because they are grounded in human relationships. The Skynet vector, data flowing through ungoverned technical pipelines without cultural oversight. Efficient until it fails, catastrophic when it does. MediMap and ManageMyHealth were both running Skynet vector architectures. Both paid for it. Both left the communities they serve, including New Zealand's most vulnerable populations, exposed to harms that a cultural governance layer would have made far harder to inflict. Here is what boards should do this week. Run the Kaitiakitanga Checklist at your next board meeting. Verify that your audit of intent covers integrity anomalies, not just access anomalies. Confirm that your Maori governance partners hold decision authority, not an advisory role. The nurses at those aged care facilities caught the falsified records because they knew their patients. The question for your board is whether your organization has built the governance architecture that turns those human relationships into systemic defense. 2 breaches in 8 weeks. The governance gap is undeniable. The Kaitiakitanga Checklist is where you start. If you are a director or board advisor who needs to understand cyber risk without the jargon, subscribe to the Hamberger Report. New videos every day. That is the Hamberger Report for today. If this was useful, subscribe and hit the like button. It helps more professionals find the channel. You will find links to everything we covered in the description below. I am Andreas Hamberger, and I will see you tomorrow.